It's a political rally. And, by the way, demanding that he keep his promises to them, to illegal immigrants, to criminals. And that's what they are. When you break into this country, you're a criminal. That is a criminal act. And the facilities of the Border Patrol and ICE near the border are already swamped. That's why you see those pictures with children stacked like cordwood. I mentioned the article where the state police officer had to release people. The one type of person they can't just release are children, and I say children loosely, under 18, who come across the border unaccompanied. You can't just turn a child out on the street. Now, 75% of these, quote, children are 16, 17-year-olds. And a lot of them are not people we're going to be proud to have here in this country. MS-13 members, Latin Kings, 18th Street, all these Latin-based gangs that are, I can tell you, having been Virginia's Attorney General, the greatest violent crime threat in Virginia was and is MS-13. So don't think there aren't state connections to the illegal immigration issue. There absolutely are. And when you have a state that gives, or many states that give in-state tuition to illegal aliens, that give driver's licenses to illegal aliens, all in all, basically treat them like everybody else, you incentivize illegal immigration. That is an issue in the governor's race. You're going to hear more about it. It was noted I'm supporting Pete Snyder. Pete has been hitting that hard. He's not alone in that. Different candidates have different records on this subject, and it will be a general election issue for November, no matter who the Republican nominee is, because there's going to be a substantial difference between the Republican candidate position and the Democrat candidate position. And it's a good time in Virginia to be able to make that case. The first year of a Democrat administration, like 2009, when we swept in Virginia in 1993, George Allen got 57% of the vote. The first year of a Democrat administration, and it works both ways. The first year of the Trump administration went their way, but the first year of the Biden administration is going to go our way. So it's going to be a good time to make that case to the public about why those policies within Virginia are so bad. And I'm looking forward to that happening in Virginia. But at the national level, we're truly overwhelmed. Facilities are full, manpower is stretched to the limit. Over 40% of the Border Patrol is engaged right now today in caretaker activities, changing diapers, instead of fighting the cartels and outdoing the law enforcement that they were hired to do. The drug cartels on the south side of the border control the Mexican border effectively. They direct the flows of people. They also collect a fee, by the way, because they control the border. So to come through their controlled area, you have to pay them a fee. If you don't, they kill you. It's a pretty simple system. And it doesn't matter if it's children. We've seen them execute children. It doesn't matter. They have no care or concern for humanity. These are literally the most vicious, evil people in the Western Hemisphere. And Joe Biden has given them what amounts to an annuity form of work. It is guaranteed cash in their pocket because of what he's doing. It's terrible. It's tragic. I would say it's immoral. And those folks do control that border. So they'll direct the flows on a given day to cross at point one, draw the Border Patrol in, and they have scouts in our country who literally just sit on hills with cell phones and call in what they see. And so when the Border Patrol is occupied in Area 1, they'll run their drugs across another now less defended or completely undefended area of the border. That's what your loss of law enforcement coverage does on the border. You all probably saw recently the 2 terrorist watch list folks who were caught earlier this year coming across the border. That is not that uncommon. I'm not talking about thousands of people a year, but it is a regular occurrence. It is a regular concern. And the more you draw down your ability to interdict your biggest threats by dealing with illegal immigration, the more those folks will adjust their behavior, take advantage of it. They know what they're doing from around the world. In any given year, we encounter people from 140 countries along that border. Now, it's overwhelmingly Mexican, followed by Guatemalan, Hondurans, and El Salvadorans. Nonetheless, we get people from all over the world. China, Congo, Ukraine, Yemen, you name it. And that it's obviously very important to keep our Border Patrol available to police for those kinds of crossings. And when they're swamped, as they are by the invasion going on right now, they just can't do that. And you can't blame them. The person to blame is President Biden. So what's coming? You know, it's mid-April. We haven't even had this president for 3 months. And all of our available facilities are overcrowded already, particularly with children. And there's nowhere else to put them. You're reading about the no-bid contract for $500 million for this one particular guy to basically be a middleman with hotels to place these folks in hotels. They're spending $70,000 per family of 4 for 6 months just for housing. I mean, do the math on that. $142,000 a year. You might as well just buy them a dang house, keep ownership of it, and I'm sure when they get around to giving them an immigration trial, they'll still be there. Not. And so one other thing I want to mention, because it seems to be controversial on an academic level, and that is what this illegal invasion does to our poor people. At the end of 2019, under Donald Trump's leadership, we achieved the lowest poverty rate in recorded history in the United States of America. It's an amazing accomplishment. It didn't just happen with tax cuts. It didn't just happen with tax cuts and deregulation, something I care a lot about, though he made a more earnest effort in deregulation than any other president in the modern era. It also took cracking down on illegal immigration. It doesn't take a degree in economics to know that if you dump hundreds of thousands of laborers into the low end of the labor pool, you will depress wages for the other people already in that pool, including our native poor people. And in fact, they will have a harder time getting a job in the first place. Now, I've listened to like hotel owners say, oh my gosh, but I can't get anybody for $18 an hour. Well, then pay $20 and raise your prices somewhat and suck it up, Buttercup. You know, that's how wages go up. And it's why we don't need a minimum wage. We just need to enforce our laws. It's interesting that the same people who are big fans of illegal immigration also want to mandate higher minimum wages. That's because their other policies don't let wages rise at the bottom end of the scale. And, you know, I am not one of those people who thinks there are jobs Americans won't do. There are jobs Americans won't do if you don't pay them enough. So let's pay them enough. And I'm guessing that everyone in that room would agree with me that you'd be willing to pay a little more just to let those wages rise, because those wages, of course, will be reflected in what we buy. But that would be honest. It would be consistent with the law, and our fellow Americans would do better for it. So, especially on our side, we don't necessarily keep in mind the effects of policies on the poor, and we should, because our free market, rule of law policies are better for the poor. So now let me circle back to the border. One of the things Joe Biden's policies are doing there is giving the shaft to our poor people. He's undercutting our poor people as they try to move up the economic scale. Don't ever forget that. And please, in conversation, I hope that you'll share that. Now I want to close by connecting some dots. When you and I look at that border, we see a humanitarian crisis and a complete collapse, voluntary, of the rule of law. The radical left sees a voter registration line. What do I mean by that? So at the same time they're implementing very intentionally these illegal invasion policies, they've put two, not one, but two amnesty bills through the House of Representatives, with some Republican support, by the way, and they're passing, or trying to pass, H.R. 1. They passed it out of the House. This is their election fraud bill, Corrupt Politicians Act, call it what you want, that will order states, among the many other bad things it does, that orders states to put every adult in their databases, whether it's DMV, public health, whatever it may be, schools, into the registration database, meaning to register them to vote, even when they're non-citizens. And the radical left would say, well, the bill doesn't say non-citizens get to vote. That's true. But it does everything except that, including take away the penalty for them voting. If they got registered and they vote, and they say, oh, I was automatically registered, I didn't know, the bill says they don't get prosecuted. So effectively, for all intents and purposes, the radical left here is looking to register all these folks to vote when they end up in a state somewhere, get a driver's license, or go get a vaccine with the public health department, or put their kids in our schools and so forth. So these dots are connected. This is not, while it's chaotic in terms of the logistics and the facilities and the manpower, and pray for those folks on the front line. They don't want to be doing their job this way. At the national level, this is intentional by the left. This is part of a bigger long-term plan. They believe they win these votes. And let me just comment on that real quickly, and then I really will close. The Republican Party, the Libertarian Party, the Conservatives, everybody right of center. The principles we believe in, the policies that flow from those principles, are very competitive with our fellow Hispanic Americans. They're very entrepreneurial, they're faithful, they're hardworking, they want better for their kids in the immigration tradition of this country. And so for our citizen friends who are Hispanic, which is about a fifth of the country, our principles are very attractive. And the left has, because they see everything through the filter of identity politics, they assume any minority will vote Democrat. Well, look how well Donald Trump did there. He did better with black citizens than ever before. He did better with Hispanic citizens. Of course, he got them both to the lowest unemployment they'd ever seen. We spent more time under 8% unemployment for black Americans under Donald Trump than the entire rest of my life and even Robert's life combined. Combined. That's how good a job those economic policies did for the people who need it most. Minorities, the poor, and of course minorities are disproportionately poor. So that's why that works out so well. And if we get back to those kinds of policies, whether Donald Trump is back or not, the Republican Party, those of us right of center, conservatives, have to focus our legislative efforts, our governing efforts, on the well-being of ordinary Americans. Not the Chamber of Commerce, not a bunch of corporate donors, ordinary Americans. If we do that, and we become known for doing that, we will be the dominant party in America, even with all the problems we have today. We will be the dominant party in America for decades to come. And there are ways to do that, and some people, particularly in leadership, particularly in Washington, whose names begin with Mick, are going to have to alter their focus and their priorities. And we can help drive that from the bottom up. 2022 in Virginia, we got a real chance to win back some seats, including right where you are. Your Congresswoman there, Luria, is voting for this crazy stuff like H.R. 1, the so-called Equality Act, to undermine all religious institutions, and so forth. So it's going to be an interesting year here in Virginia, as our state election is a test bed, as it has been in the past, for what will come in 2022. I hope you all will stay engaged. I appreciate the opportunity I wish I was sharing good news with you, but to talk to you about the border and the nuts and bolts, and keeping in mind that the men and women of ICE and of the Border Patrol, they don't want to be operating the way they're operating. They do work in administration. They've got to follow their instructions within the boundaries of the law. But they know how bad these policies are, and they told in transition, the career people told the Biden folks, this is what would happen, and they plowed ahead anyway. And now their challenge is political courage with their own left-wing base, because they know it has to be done to stem the flow, but we did all of it, and so anything they do now looks like doing something from the Trump administration. And for them, orange man bad trumps everything, pun intended. And so they have a very hard time bringing themselves to undertake any policies to stem this flow. And if they don't, we're going to continue to suffer, and it's going to get worse as a country, particularly for the border states. But with that, Robert, I'm happy to take a few questions, and it's good to be with you all. I've got about 10 minutes I can do that.
10 minutes, okay. Keep in mind, these are questions only, no editorializing. And Ken, before we go to the audience, I just want to make it clear that there's a lot of people in this room that hold the Steelers in disdain. But
Hey, Jack, just get the camera and turn it
around.
get the camera out of his
Ken,
hand.
can I just, yeah, I know, but I would just, these Redskin fans, Ken, can I ask you a question? Who's your father's football team?
Pittsburgh Steelers.
Thank you very much, y'all. Okay, questions?
And my lame-o, politically correct team doesn't have a name anymore, so I don't root for them. I'm awfully tempted to root for them.
I know. Okay.
Just to spite Dan Snyder.
So questions, please come up and get on camera so we can pick up your voice. Anybody have a question? Kathleen McCarthy, right here.
Hi.
Louder.
Mr. Cuccinelli, what kind of benefits do these illegals get as far as Medicaid, food stamps that we're paying for where they've never paid a penny into?
What's it called?
So what kind of benefits do they get? The answer varies widely state to state. And of course, with the Democrats in control there in Virginia, they have started to go down the path of expanding these benefits. The most obvious one is the in-state tuition for illegals. But you look out to California, which now Virginia Democrats openly say they want to emulate, which is incredible. We used to treat California as a joke in Virginia, and we should. We shouldn't be emulating it, but they give almost the full panoply of Medicaid benefits. And Virginia just expanded Medicaid to immigrants recently. I want to say to legal, not illegal, but legal. But even so, when immigrants come here legally, they're supposed to be able to support themselves. They're supposed to not be reliant on welfare. That's called the public charge rule. And so they, in my view, I don't think it's a harsh thing at all to say they shouldn't get any. They need to work their way into the citizenry on their own 2 feet. And if they can't, they need to return home. And but that is not the case, ma'am. There are a lot of states that give an awful lot of benefits. Virginia is creeping that way. The worst one, of course, being tuition for in-state tuition for illegals. And the reason that one is so bad is because of the demand by ordinary citizens for those seats, and those seats are budget seats. Because the in-state students are subsidized in a way out-of-state students are not. So you aren't just giving a welfare benefit to someone who is here illegally, you're taking a seat away thereby from someone who is here legally. And whether they're citizens or they are legal immigrants, that's who loses that seat. So it is a growing problem. There isn't, with this administration, there will not be a universal bar at the federal level to the use of federal dollars for this. So it is going to continue to be decided state by state.
Thank you, Ken. That public charge issue, you supported that. I mean, you brought that forward. Is that correct? And
yeah. So when I ran the legal immigration agency, the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, we finalized the public charge rule, which said that basically what I just said in 1,000 pages, that an immigrant coming to this country, going through our legal immigration process, has to be able to support themselves financially, or as we have done historically and traditionally, have a sponsor who will absorb that financial responsibility. And, you know, for the left to get all upset and crazy about that really is a denial of history. We've had this on the books in America for 150 years. So it's the way it ought to be. And most Americans agree on that. Like so many other things, the radical left is driving the Democrats, but ordinary Americans just don't agree with them.
thank you, Ken. That question was asked by Kathleen McCarthy from Norfolk, and now Virginia Wasserberg. Virginia?
Hi, thank you for being here today with us. My question is about what you were talking about with them being able to just register people. I mean, I pulled up, when you were talking, I pulled up the Constitution of Virginia, and it says in Article 2, Section 1, that each voter shall be a citizen of the United States, shall be 18 years of age. And it says no person who's been convicted of a felony shall be qualified to vote unless his civil rights have been restored by the governor or other appropriate authority. So I guess my question is, how is it that they're getting around our Constitution? And for us going into our unassembled convention in just a few weeks, what is it that we should be asking our candidates for Republican Attorney General when it comes to our Constitution on how they can fix this in Virginia?
Sure, great question. So the HR 1 bill is about 800 pages long. It's got so many bad provisions in it, but you just zeroed in on a part of the bill that is particularly ugly. I talked to a little bit about earlier, and that is that they set up a system where they don't say it's legal for non-citizens to vote. That's not in the language of the bill. Yet, they order all 50 states and the District of Columbia to vote. They say all eligible, and the word they use is very interesting, individuals. They don't say citizens, just to your point from the state constitution. They say individuals. And they couple that with a new federal criminal felony for state and local officials, and it's worded very vaguely, that interfere or get in the way of people registering to vote or practicing or exercising their rights to vote. Now, if you just looked at that provision, that seems reasonable. You don't want people interfering with people's right to vote, right? None of us do. Except that's not what it's for. It is to intimidate those state and local officials to not ask the question, are you a citizen? Are you qualified to register to vote? And if you work at the DMV and somebody comes to your desk, their name is not in your database, they don't speak English, and you know that with this transaction they effectively become registered to vote, unless you do something to flag them as not qualified. And really, with the way the system would be is you get them to identify the fact that they're not qualified. And you have this federal felony hanging out there, and it clearly politically minded federal administration. They're willing to undertake political prosecutions, is what I'm saying. Are you really going to put your own butt on the line just to make sure the voter roll is clean in this one instance? And the human answer is no, you're not. And the radical Stalinist leftists who are more than willing to throw you in jail or just charge you with that crime, even if you get out from under it, to intimidate others, they know that. So they always argue back, well, it's not legal for citizens to vote. That's true, but you can't stop them from doing it. And we're literally, under H.R. 1, you would literally have millions over the course of a couple of years, you'd have millions of illegal aliens registered to vote. Millions. And many of them will vote. And I can tell you as a former Attorney General, elections are unique in terms of the problem they present. You must secure them on the front end because it is almost impossible to undo fraud after the fact. Okay, so we figure out Fred voted illegally. Which ballot do we pull out? As of now, we don't associate a particular ballot with a particular person. The technology exists to do it, but we don't do it because of the respect of the privacy of the vote. And by the way, we're in Virginia, so a little history. For most of the early part of this country, the way you voted was you showed up at the county courthouse and you raised your hand in public. So, you know, I don't think individualized ballots is out of the question. Now, you know, Donald Trump probably wouldn't have won in 2016 if that's how he voted. So it's an interesting thought. But for security purposes, until we can identify particular fraudulent votes, it heightens the necessity of securing the ballot on the front end. And even when we can do that, the pure demands on investigative manpower and the courts in this very short time period after an election to certify before it's time to start a new government is so short. Our investigators, our law enforcement, and our courts are not built for this. They can't handle it. And so we have to secure the ballot on the front end. And one of the things that I'm spending a lot of my time on, I work on immigration for the Heritage Foundation, but I also work on I lead an effort with the Election Transparency Initiative, working on fixing voter fraud across the country on behalf of the Susan B. Anthony List and American Principles Project, and working with a broad coalition of entities. So this is a subject I work on every day. We do have work to do in Virginia. We're not in as bad shape as some others, though. You know, some people would like to take us farther down that road. It is going to be important to win this election this year, and you know, I'm sure he's not the only one, but my candidate Pete Snyder has put out, you know, an extensive proposal in this area, and that's important. It's going to be an important that our nominee be prioritized this issue going forward, and Pete has, and I'm sure others would as well. So, you know, we're going to be in a good position within Virginia. But a lot of you in that room, we're going to need to sign up as election officials. You got to be on the inside, and I don't mean handing out literature outside the poll. I mean actually working, you know, from 5 a.m. to they close the polls and shut down the machines. So you're there to watch. You're there to challenge voters who, or attempted voters who don't look like they belong on the voter rolls, or who aren't who they say they are. Those kinds of things. That all matters, and it takes all of our participation. It's not just something we fight for politically and somebody else fixes. The people who implement this stuff matter too. And I would urge everyone in that room to look at becoming an election official in your home area. You guys aren't in a great area to be confident of. So, but you can be a lot more confident when you're in the room if they've got to slip it by you, right? So that's the biggest single thing you can do to secure those ballots. But we're going to try to beat H.R. 1 by maintaining the filibuster. If the filibuster stays, H.R. 1 can't pass. Neither can the court packing they recently proposed. So that filibuster is very important. And unfortunately, we're reliant on Democrats for that. But there are some, Joe Manchin, Kristen Sinema in Arizona, John Tester in Montana, even Dianne Feinstein in California has said, I'm not real comfortable getting rid of the filibuster. Margaret Hassan in New Hampshire, she'd get rid of it in a minute, except she's up in 2022, and the governor up there, Sununu, no conservative or anything, but he polls well. And New Hampshire's interesting. They have an all-Democrat federal delegation. But in 2020, 2 of the 3 state legislatures that got flipped from party control were the Democrat House and Senate. They went from Democrat to Republican, and Cuomo is obviously the governor up there. So it's full Republican control at the state level, full Democrat control at the federal level. So she's worried about her own election. And why she votes to keep the filibuster and thereby block H.R. 1 is not of as much moment to me as the fact that she does it. So we'll see how all that plays it out.
Ken, we've got a couple more questions. We have several Navy pilots, former Navy pilots, and one of them's here this morning. Kathy Owens, also running for the House of Delegates here in Virginia. If you could, can you in the
Yeah, I can take. If we could do one more, and
that's it.
Hey there, I'm glad you're running.
Thanks,
In addition to being good for the governor's race, I think that we can take the House back this year. So I hope you're going to end up in there, not just in the House, but in the majority.
I think I can bring home a win. Thanks. My question real quickly is, what, if you could speak a little bit on what recourse you think the Department of Defense has when when military installations are being forced to provide facilities for some of these overflow folks from the border, especially when our active duty military has extremely restrictive COVID restrictions imposed on them.
Yeah, so a lot of this accountability has to come through Congress, and of course with a Democrat Congress that isn't happening. The military, the entire infrastructure is historically very resistant to helping on the immigration issue, but it is an invasion. And, you know, frankly, where they ought to be is they ought to be deployed so fully on the border that nobody can get across. But that isn't going to happen under this administration. It didn't even happen under Trump, even though, that would have been the time for it. And it really is because the military operates so much within executive control. The policies of this administration are going to hold sway until you have a Congress that is willing to use the power of the purse to put restrictions on that. And I don't see that for the next 2 years. So, Kathy, I think they're going to be just absorbing this for the next 2 years. And I agree with you on the COVID thread. It's amazing. Joe Biden says maybe you can have a little barbecue on July 4th if things get better. But we'll bring in an overflow, uncontrolled 10% COVID positive population and give them bus tickets and give them plane tickets. And by the way, they can get on those buses and planes without identification. But God forbid you try to do that. And the hypocrisy is just, it's beyond comparison. And, the natural instinct is this is so hypocritical that there must be something we can do about it. And the answer is our opportunity really doesn't come until 2022 when you can flip Luria out of there and hopefully Spanberger in Central Virginia as well. I hope Nick Freitas runs again. He got so close. And, we have an opportunity to put a dent in that in Virginia. But between now and then, all we can really do is make noise about it. It's painful, but it's the reality. I don't, it's never been my practice to try to paint things over prettier than they are, so.
Ken, I want to take this opportunity to thank you, but in closing, we've been able down here to cobble together an initiative to stop the critical race theory, and we've all come in one accord between the Tidewater Libertarian Party, the Virginia Beach GOP, the 4 women's clubs of Virginia Beach, and
Tea Party.
Oh, the Tea Party, we've all come together to stop critical race theory. We had a big rally at the school system. We feel this is a dangerous, dangerous initiative against this nation and what we all stand for. And so I just wanted to plant that in your mind, which you're already aware of. And then just say thank you so much for taking your time out and the time away from your wife. And how many children do you have now? Six kids? Seven kids and your dog, right?
3 dogs. I don't know how many cats. They're not allowed in the house. And 2 grandchildren and 1 son-in-law along the way. So, of course, the grandchildren now trump the children. So that's the way that goes. But
yeah, right. Well, listen, everybody, let's hear it for.
I appreciate your engagement, including on critical race theory. SCRAT, what a great acronym. Hang in there. And Robert, thank you for all your leadership. I'll tell you what, America would be a different place if we had about 10 Robert Deans in every state.
We're going to play another Pete Snyder supporter over there. He's just shaking his head. Right? So Ken, go have fun with your family and everybody today. And I know you're busy.
Thank you all.
Let's hear it again. Ken Cuccinelli. Okay, so now, Bill?
What can I do for you?
Okay. Try to get more members of my fan club.
Yes, I've upped the annual dues payment.
Yes.
To $3 now. If you give, I'll give you $3 if you sign up.
We
All
know
right.
Councilman John Moss.
Yes. Our last greatest speaker is John Moss. He's going to tell us
And then
what's
candidates.
going on. Yeah.
Well, that's a very hard act to follow, and but Ken Cuccinelli has done a great service to the Commonwealth of Virginia for certain. I'm just going to focus on the biggest decision that councils ever make, is confiscating your revenue. You know, many people, I certainly believe my job is to be the firewall between your wallet and the insatiable appetite of government for spending. Others think they're an enabler, and so you're always at risk to higher taxes. So I thought I'd just share with you a little bit before I get to the other topic I posted this morning. This is the council members' Christmas list of things that they want to add over and above what the city manager has proposed in his budget of $2.2 billion. Which includes the school board's funding formula request, which I know Laura will probably talk about. And then these are some other things that came up. One is to provide an additional 1% increase to as much as 5.5% for all city employees on top of the city manager's 3% recommendation. And that would cost $22.9, well, let's just say $23 million. Yes, I'm not saying that I hadn't heard this until I got this letter in our packet on Friday that any council member actually was asking what that would even cost. But that would 5.5% raise on top of the 3% would cost $23 million. And each penny of real estate is about $6.2 million, so you can do the math and think that's about 4 cents more additional real estate tax you would pay for that. Now, the one that's on our plate that Jim Wood has proposed, with no analysis I might add, to implement a 5.5% structural adjustment for all public safety. That's police, fire, EMS, and sheriff. That's $7.4 million. Well, I mention this is the police chief gave a very good explanation about what we have been suffering in terms of our ability to man our police department. Some of that's market, and some of that is just the changing political environment and respect and appreciation for law enforcement officers in general, which makes recruitment extremely difficult. And also that Norfolk announced that they were giving their police officers an 8% raise. So we have some market issues to deal with, but Norfolk wasn't giving all their public safety people 8% raises. They're addressing their attrition and recruitment problems. I have proposed to reduce the real estate tax rate to the revenue neutral rate. The city manager has recommended a $1.007 increase. That is an increase because I'm sure many people in here know that the state law says we are required to reduce the real estate tax rate to the revenue neutral rate, and then we can increase it with a public hearing, and then we vote to increase taxes. So the city manager's budget is in fact recommending to increase the real estate tax rate above the lowered rate. Here's one, to increase the funding for MoCA, that's the Virginia Museum of Contemporary Art, to market the Maya Lin exhibit. They'd like the taxpayers to give them $300,000 for that. Someone is proposing, they never put the names by this, so I don't know who they are, but I'll tell you the ones I'm supporting so you'll know what I put on this list. The tax decrease was on my list. Amend the city code to make Juneteenth, that's Emancipation Day, an official holiday, and that comes with a $500,000 overtime bill. Let's see here. Construction of a Centerville Recreation Center between $30 million and $70 million. I can't say in and of itself that's not something we would like to do, but I think our highest requirement for our ability to borrow money is to keep your house dry. And draining and flooding is our biggest problem, and we just don't have the spare debt capacity at this point in time for that, and I'm sure the people in Centerville would like to have their homes dry too. Then there's some things we've already taken care of. We'll be taken care of on Tuesday. We are buying gunshot detection systems for the oceanfront and for a couple of targeted neighborhoods with high crime and nighttime shootings, just firing guns into the air. That's a sad thing to say, but we're doing that. We're also looking at increasing our buy of body cameras, accelerating that purchase, and hopefully the right holsters so they work when they pull out. And what I'm concerned about that's on here is these automatic license tag readers. I'm concerned about the data privacy governance of that before I'm willing to vote for it. I want to know how it's going to be managed and oversight. You know, technology sounds great, but it can be misused. And then the other things all deal with creating an operations center within the new building too that we're renovating for the police to have a integrated for all the gunshot stuff and all our cameras citywide. And that makes sense, and we are funding that on Tuesday, so that's already taken care of. And some equipment replacement for $250. So the big things there really are, you know, my whole view about things is we should be making decisions based upon the data and analysis and priorities. Public safety is our first obligation. Public safety for people is the police department. Public safety for, and also there's obviously, you can say this fire protects people when their house catches on fire, but when you think about public safety for people out there, you generally think police department. And today our biggest threat for property is not fire, it's flooding. So to me, take care of the police department, take care of flooding. Those are our top two things we need to be doing with the revenues that we have. And then we need to work our way down to education. Unfortunately, there's not much we can do or I can do relative to education because we have adopted a school funding formula. So the schools will share in any tax reductions that we do, but they are free to spend the money how they want. I personally would like to see them give just across the board raises like the city's doing for non-teachers. I mean, a teacher is someone in the classroom putting grades in the grade book, calling a parent at home. It's not the tech supervisor, it's not all the head shed down there at the school system. They can get 3%, but the teachers probably even deserve more than 5%, just because it's hard to recruit, and they have been asked to do just incredible stuff during this whole COVID stuff. And they are the people that actually deliver the service at the deck plate and not the overhead, and I think that's where Laura and company were. The other recommendation I've made relative to the school budget is the capital improvement program for the schools is not governed by the school funding formula. The school board is asking for an additional, and the city manager's just passed it on, an additional $69 million of borrowing authority. Now, what you have to understand is our ability to borrow money, just like yours, is limited, and a lot of it's tied up. My position is all our available borrowing authority should go towards funding drainage and flood projects, because that's our biggest threat that we face. The school board wants to accelerate building the new Princeton High School, wants to inject for the first time the replacement of Betty F. Williams, and they want to change out First Colonial and put in Bayside High School for accelerated modernization. I only bring this in as a context. You may recall the Aragon Elementary School on Jericho Road. How many people have been by the way that school is? Well, originally we had the gifted and talented program, all donation, in that school, and it was unacceptable for rodents, da-da-da-da-da-da. So we built a $65 million facility off Ferry Plantation Road. We didn't close the school. We moved sixth graders in there from Bayside Middle School. So all of a sudden it was acceptable for Bayside Middle School sixth graders, but wasn't acceptable for L donation. So something there didn't match up. Well, they're still in there. That isn't one of the programs they're replacing and not moving those students. But I think that I'd rather accelerate keeping your home dry, keeping your streets dry so you can get to and from work. And I just think those buildings, that's not a higher, not that we shouldn't do it, but it isn't a highest priority as the flooding threat that our neighbors and our businesses and our roads face. We need to get on top of our flooding problem. So I'm recommending that $69 million be realigned into the CIP for flood projects. So that's the big number. The top line's $2.2 billion. I'm recommending a lower real estate tax rate than the manager, but I've also found $5.9 million to deal with the issues of the police department relative to recruiting and retention, because he has come back and showed that with the manning that they have, they can't really protect the citizens of Virginia Beach like we're asking him to do. And we have got to make sure that every neighborhood is as safe as any other neighborhood, and neighborhoods shouldn't have to see their manning go down because we have to surge to the ocean front. And that's the situation. We've even pulled officers out of the middle schools because that's how bad the manning shortage is. And the sheriff's done a great job helping out. He's got his own issues. I encourage anyone, if you're 18 or older, you can apply for a job in the sheriff's department. We're starting a police cadet program on July 1st for 18 to 21. But I encourage anyone who knows people out there, we have a great police department, to really consider public safety police in their thoughts and when they're looking for a career. And a good place to start is the sheriff, because obviously we're not putting 18-year-olds out on the street in the police department yet. We're trying to hold that standard up a little higher, because you got people out there using lethal force, and you want a very mature individual doing that. But I'll take any questions that you might have, but that in a nutshell is where I'm at. Yes, ma'am. Richard?
Do you have the votes?
Well, the real question is, do you have the energy to influence the people to vote because they work for you? I wouldn't tell you. If historically looking back, I would say the answer is no. It's easy for people to use your money to buy other people's votes. But I'm only accountable for myself. I'm not accountable to those other 10 people, but it's really up to the people out here to tell people that we can do better than this. And I think also you have to look at is, how many people out here even got a 3% raise this year? Raise your hand. How many people got a 3% raise last year? How many people know someone who lost work for some portion of last year? How many people know people who didn't get a bonus at their work, a COVID bonus at their work? How many people got a COVID bonus at your work? How many people here have a defined benefit pension where they work? I think sometimes, I think we all have great pride in our public service. And the fact that, because they do a great job, and at the deck plate, they have the hardest job. There's no doubt about it. Whether you're a bus driver, you're the guy reading the water meter, all those things, those are serious, important jobs. But the person who works the meat counter at the deli shop, the person who drives the trash truck for waste management, everybody's job is important to make the place work. So sometimes you have to take we can't pay private sector wages and public sector benefits without impoverishing the people that we serve. See, there's gotta be a better balance, and knowing that you're being fair and just. And I often ask people, I talked to someone last night at dinner, and they didn't even understand their own pension plan where they worked at Norfolk Naval Shipyard. Understandable, because we don't do a good job explaining it, but when you look at the future value and bring that forward, that's a huge pay benefit. It's not pay today, but you can't get both all the pay you want today and then get all the pay you want in the future, because none of us out here can afford that. We just can't. So no, I don't have the votes today. My job is to educate and show the opportunities. Like I always say, if the budget is something I feel it puts an undue financial burden on you, the citizens, and it's not supported by analysis, I won't support it. I'll vote no. I'll take those half-truth ads every single day. And if the public decides to send me home, my wife will still take me, and I'll just move on in life. But I'm not going to sacrifice good judgment just to gain political favor.
One more question.
Well, one is, yes, these benefits are not treated frequently as the non-tax income that they are. Everything you said is true. Just one little thing you were saying that the Bayside 6 program is not being changed. Actually, that will be integrated into Betty Lee, and that'll be 4 through 6. So that one will get moved. And you can probably address this since we talked about this on Virginia's question. Call your representatives, see what kind of responses you're getting. Because I have gotten responses like, you don't live in my district, you're not my constituent. I'm offended that you would ask me about my vote. I know somebody else who called someone who said, where did you get this number? Don't call this number again. Pay attention, because those people forgot who they worked for.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that is interesting. I hope that if and when that passes, that you have a plan to, because I know the city council in the neighborhood wants that property that's in the back of that school to become a park. So you need to know that they want that property back. That's the public's property, so just be mindful. But I'm glad to hear that, but I certainly think that the acceleration, the debt service is going to right. I think that was my last question.
Diana had
sorry.
her hand up early.
Earlier you said something about all the employees getting an increase of 1.5% in their raise?
No, I said the city manager is recommending an across-the-board pay rate, cost of living raise of 3% for all 7,500 plus employees.
And, I thought you said, and they wanted to put, somebody else wanted to put an increase of.
Yes, that's correct. Someone there's a recommendation from someone, I don't know who, to give them the equivalent of a 5.5% raise on top of the 3% raise, which would cost $23 million.
So the 1.5% increase would cost
No.
$23 million, or the whole 4%
No.
increase would cost?
The 3%'s baked into the budget. The additional 5.5% on top of the 3% to be 8.5% would cost $23 million.
That's for the public.
That's all city employees. The pay raise just for public safety, which would be 3% plus 5.5 for 8.5, was 7 point.
So just for public safety, the
Is
increase is $7.4 million.
$7.4 million.
And for the rest of the employees, is a $23 million increase? Yes. So the question is, where is the money going to come from?
Oh, well, none of these, I think I'm the only person who actually identified offsets to pay for the things they were asking for. So either one, he says in his letter kindly, the city manager, who does a great job, I might add, said, you either, council, if you want these things, you either, one, have to come up with additional revenues, that's just a nice word of saying tax increases, or you need to identify additional things that are currently in my budget that you want to take out and vertically eliminate to provide the funding. Well, we know how often that happens. The path of least resistance is generally your wallet. But no one has identified the offsets to pay for their request.
Let's hear for Councilman John Boggs. Okay, now, Joe, we want to go through the candidates here. The first one in the room this morning before 8 a.m. was Karen, followed by Kathy Owens. What other candidates do we have in here? We're speaking on behalf. Okay, and then we'll close it out with Mr. Bartholomew.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Karen Greenhall. I'm running for the House of Delegates in the 85th District. That's Northwest Virginia Beach, Pembroke Mall, Mount Trashmore, Regent University, and I border over against Chesapeake. I was born here, born and raised, lived and worked in all 5 South Side cities, and I just thought about it this morning. I actually own businesses in 3 of them. I work hard. I had my first job at 15. I was the first female record driver in Hampton Roads. Most of y'all don't know that. I can tow your car. I started my first business in my garage building cabinets. Yes, I can build a cabinet, I can install it, I can make your countertop. I grew that business from Chesapeake to Suffolk, where I built a computerized manufacturing plant that I sold. I'm on my second business. I do cybersecurity, privacy for healthcare all across the country. So I work hard. As a mom, I was so involved in my children's education. We did public school, private school, and homeschool. Both of my children graduated from college, and I'm very proud of that because I didn't get to go to college. I had to work hard to make my own future, and I was taught to work hard. But all of that's great, okay? I'm a mom. I know how to handle financial problems. I know how to grow a business. I was born in Virginia. But that doesn't tell you why to vote for me. I want you to vote for me because I love Virginia. I grew up proud to be an American, and I grew up so happy that I was born in Virginia. My mama, for fun, would go to the library, and I'd just go down the library rows and pick out books. I went through the whole daggone library, and I identified with Patrick Henry. Because Patrick Henry was poor. He wanted to be a lawyer, and he couldn't afford law school, and they just put him off to the side. He taught himself, passed the bar, and that's the kind of Virginia that I grew up in, where you could work hard, and it wasn't equal outcomes. It was equal opportunity, and we're losing that. And they're taking our tax money to guarantee everyone an equal outcome instead of working to make sure we all have an equal opportunity to be our best and to achieve the excellence that we all have the right to work towards. So if you vote, if I get into the House of Delegates, the first thing we're going to do is undo a lot of the damage done in the last couple of years. And I want strong families. I want every family to have the opportunity to be involved in their children's education like I was. If you want to start a business, the opportunity should be there, but you're not guaranteed you're going to achieve. But in Virginia, you should be able to work hard and be your best. Excellence is what we're losing. It's not the outcome. It's the opportunity to be excellent. Karen Greenhall, 85th, thank you so much.
Thanks, Karen. Kathy,
Thank you, Robert.
you want to get over and behind the mic?
Want
You
me
know,
to?
yes,
Anybody
ma'am.
hear me?
Yeah, but we need it on the mic for the video.
Do what Robert says. Do what Robert says.
Robert's rules.
Yes, I am Kathy Owens, and I'm running to fill the seat of Jason Miares in the 82nd District House of Representatives. Who would have thought we live in a world that one party rules our nation and rules our state, making us less safe and less prosperous? I thought about that, and I had a lot of discussions, and I decided to run because, as I told Ken, I think I can bring home a win. And I think I can bring home a win because I have before. I'm a retired Navy pilot. I'm a retired commercial airline pilot. I'm an aeronautical engineer. I'm a small business owner, and I'm a mom. I've lived here for over 30 years, and for decades I have served in the community, the region, and in the state. I was my civic league president for over 11 years. I'm currently the vice president of our Central Business District Association at Town Center. I am on the Virginia Beach Military Economic Development Advisory Committee. I am the vice president of the Virginia War Memorial Foundation in Richmond, and I sit on the Virginia Board of Veteran Services. Folks, the seats that we need to keep and flip red, those races are not going to be a cinch. We need to be laser focused on beating our Democrat opponents, and we can only do that by electing strong, effective, and experienced leaders, and I am that leader for the 82nd District. My information is on your tables. The weird thing about the GOP is they haven't announced when this election will be, what day it will be, what time it will be, and what location it will be. So the only way to find out if you want to support me and vote in that election is please sign up so we can tell you as soon as the GOP announces when, where, and what time this election is. So I appreciate your support. I appreciate you spreading the word. We do have a candidate meet and greet this coming Wednesday at Ballyhoo's off of the Shore Drive and Great Neck area. So thank you so much for your support.
Thank you, Kat.
Go for it.
Okay, is anybody here, oh, gentleman back here, and then Mr. Ray, are you representing anybody this morning?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to.
Raise your hand if you're ready to save Virginia this November. So, one of my favorite quotes from President Reagan is that every generation is only one generation away from losing its freedom. I believe in Virginia, sadly, we could be only one election away from losing our freedoms. We've seen all the mess that Terry McAuliffe and Route Northam the past 8 years. The tyranny, you can't call it anything else. It's flat out tyranny, it's dictatorship, it's evil. That's what they've done to this state, and we have to stop it before it's too late. The clock is ticking, and if we're going to have a candidate who can save Virginia with our help, I think we need Glenn Youngkin. We got lots of good people running, but I've prayed hard and I've looked into all of candidates very well, and I think Glenn's our best candidate. He's a fighter. You know, people talk about, well, Glenn's a businessman. He's invested in China. He's a multimillionaire. He's never been in politics before. Well, guess what? Donald Trump was all those things, and look what he did for our country. So let's put a fighter in this November. And we need someone who's pro-gun like he is, a devout Christian man who shares his testimony openly in rallies, which are like a whole lot better than the governor we have now, who on Good Friday signs a bill to allow late-term abortions. So let's get in a fighter. Let's get someone who's an outsider. And together with our support, if we all come together, we can do our part this November to change Virginia, and we can make Virginia once again the greatest state to live, work, and raise a family in. Thank y'all so much.
Yeah, boo me, I like you. I'm representing Pete Snyder, and let me just say, I like my friend. He's a great guy. I love him to death. I love him to death. But you know, I wish another speaker was up here because I would have great joy in doing this, but I don't have great joy in doing this. I just got a text that says this came from the NRA Political Victory Fund, which ranks all of the candidates in their stances on guns. Kirk Cox, he has an A. Pete Snyder has an A on the questionnaire. Amanda Chase has an A. There is Mr. Youngkin has a question mark. And Sergio De La Pena has an A with, I guess his questionnaire was worthy of an A. So there's your stance on guns there. If you want to go there, you can go to the Political Victory Fund and look at that. So check this out. I got a couple things to say. We're done. I had one of the other speakers for one of the other candidates. They're always whining and complaining. Oh, Pete put out some nasty stuff about me. Oh, he said some nasty stuff about our candidate. Blah blah blah. Well, if that makes you cry, what are you going to do when the Democrats run against you? I mean, what are you going to do when they call you racist, misogynistic, Islamophobic, germophobic, xenophobic, homophobic, cleanophobic, all that other great stuff? So let me just tell you this. The thing that we have to do is we have to not do the same thing that we've always done. And Pete Snyder is our only chance to win this thing. We got some great candidates running decent candidates. They're great in their place. At the end of the day, I was always taught not to agree with another candidate, but I agree. Trump was an outsider. The problem is in that situation is that Pete is proven. He's a reliable conservative. You know Kirk Cox, let's just say that. You know Pete Snyder. You even know Amanda Chase. There's some question marks there from some other candidates. I'm just saying to you that we really need to be smart about what we do this time. John's right. And John said something that my former opponent, I guess she listens to me when she talks to me because now she wants a rec center. But at any rate, the thing is, the Democrats, they don't stop at spending our tax dollars. They don't stop at being nasty. And you cannot win a race for governor when he hit me, he touched me, this, that, and the other. Folks, you know what? I'm offended because I'm offended every time I have to put this stupid mask on. I'm offended every time I see a business going out of business. I'm offended every time they try to take our guns away. And I'm offended every time they raise Medicaid expansion for people who want to take advantage of the system. We need a fighter. So yes, I don't know who's putting out those attack ads. I don't know. I don't really care. If it is our candidate, well, wow. That's what imagine what he's going to do to Terry McAuliffe when he wins the Democratic nomination. Imagine how he's going to hit him. We're not playing pity pat. This is not a gentleman's race. Because remember, folks, this is not gentlemen's races anymore. This is not my grandfather's Democratic Party. These are socialists, and they want to take over. And winning one time in the district doesn't make a difference. We need to win the entire state with new energy, with new blood, and with new fight. Vote for Pete Snyder on May the 8th. Thank you very much.
I'm blessed I get to follow that ad. I'm up here speaking on behalf of Kirk Cox. In Kirk Cox, we have a track record. We have a proven leader. Went from majority whip, majority leader, to Speaker of the House of Delegates. His track record includes tremendous support for the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, as the bald guy kindly pointed out. He has an 8 rating from the NRA. It's a lifetime rating from the NRA. He has a top rating from the DCDL. He has a voting record on gun bills. He's a retired school teacher. Education is his specialty, and he's a strong supporter of it. Last July, he was calling on Northam before Kirk even decided to run, to get the kids back in school. The damage is being done daily. He put out some initiatives. We have federal relief money coming in. He said, let's take some of that money and let's pay substitute and retired teachers to start tutoring our kids to try and get them back up to speed. And then let's continue to take some of that money, do extended summer school, and continue to tutor our kids because they need it. You see the news articles, it's all over the place. The issues are growing, they're getting worse. We need our kids in school, and Kirk has been fighting for that. You've seen the foolishness of the state parole board, letting convicted murderers, one who executed a Richmond police officer, life sentence, and they let him out. Kirk's called on the governor and for McAuliffe to speak up and fire this board. And the worst part of it is, the leader of that board is now a judge in JDR here in Virginia Beach. Get rewarded by the Democrats for doing not good things. Kirk serves in Colonial Heights. His district is only 46% Republican. It's 30% minority. In 2019, we know that a ton of money came in from Soros, Bloomberg, and assorted miscreants into the state of Virginia. Kirk Cox survived this. He's the only suburban delegate that got reelected. They put $1.5 million in his opponent's coffers, and Kirk still got reelected by about 1,200 votes. Why is that important? Because we need a leader at the top of the ticket that can run and win in blue. We need a leader that helped make Virginia #1 for business. When Kirk Cox was majority leader, with Speaker Howell, Majority Leader Tommy Norman, and Governor McDonald, they put in the laws and the policies that made us #1 to do business in the United States. So Kirk has been there. He has the leadership skills. He will hit the floor running on day one. There's no on-the-job training with Kirk Cox. He knows how to get legislation through the House and the Senate. That's the type of leadership we need. We need a top of the ticket that can run and win in blue. I ask everybody who's registered as a delegate on May 8th to please come out and support my good friend Kirk Cox for governor. Thank you.
Okay. See, we've gotten everybody, correct? When he talked about the NRA and the gun rights and all that, they're really going to try to take our weapons away. And just like this little graphic up here says, no gun has killed a person on its own. It takes a human being to operate it. 50-50. Announcement, oh, I'm sorry. We have announcements and we have your 2 cents. We have to be out of this room completely by 11:15.
Okay.
So, announcements.
Okay, May 6th, Tea Party meeting, we have, City Treasurer Lee Henderson to talk about, some business during the, COVID-19 pandemic and what they're doing about it.
Other announcements. Okay, Dead Black.
I just would like to read this from the Code of Federal Regulations, a couple sentences here, Title 21. I want to remind everyone about.
You're gonna have to be louder, then, or come up front.
Okay. I just want to remind everyone about the coming COVID passport issue. And I want to remind everyone about Title 21 of the Federal Code Regulations. Couple sentences.
Good.
Keep this in mind. COVID passports. Federal regulation states that Americans in a clinical study, which is what's going on with vaccinations today, it's experimental, must give their written consent to any medical treatment such as vaccination. Since such vaccinations or vaccines gain licensure from the FDA and passing out through 3 or 4 federal long-term trials, the side effect ratio is never known until the vaccine is used widely, long-term, by millions. All Americans who receive the vaccine will still be enrolled in surveillance studies. Informed consent requires candidates for vaccination to be given the right to refuse vaccination and have the right to confidentiality and privacy, that their vaccination data will not be shared with other parties without their consent, and have the right to know if there are any alternatives to vaccination. You have the right to refuse. So if anybody's going to tell you you have to and have a COVID passport, you can refer to Title 21 federal regulation right there. Okay?
Thank you.
Don't let it happen.
Thanks, Dave. Okay, as our custom, we have your 2 cents. You have a minute to come up and give us whatever's on your mind about anything.
I'll start it.
Okay.
1 minute. All right. In Brazil, it's astronomical. The number of deaths are going up dramatically. They don't do anything for their people as far as any prevention measures, masking, nothing like that. They're dying in droves. Last night, the Premier of Ontario limited all public gatherings to people who live together. That is to say, you can't meet with anybody, anywhere, for anything unless they live in your house. It's still serious, all right? And despite Den's good intentions, I urge you all to please get vaccinated. Those of you who aren't going to do it, you're being misled, all right? The risk of death from COVID is enormously worse, especially if you're in a compromised state of some sort, enormously worse than the risk of death from the vaccine. So please be thoughtful about this. Don't be political about this. It's science. It's not something that you can ignore. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. But keep in mind also, you have the freedom of choice because we are libertarian. So
Of course you have freedom of choice. Just make the right choice.
I say no. Okay, the 50-50. And do we have Bud Key? Bud had something, if it's a little too long, Bud, because we got to get out of here. If you give me a copy of that, I'll do a mass mail on it. It's an incredible article. Do we have anyone in here who's never been here before?
Yeah,
If you would please stand up and identify yourself and introduce yourself, please.
Some of you do know me, whether it's Tea Party, Homeland Party. My name is Teresa Chadwick. I heard Ken Cuccinelli was speaking this morning, decided to come. I'm just going to be very honest, very candid. I'm seeing a lot. It's not just the border crisis. I think also with all the riots, the big trial in Minnesota, it's all a deterrent to hide us from what's going on.
Could very well be. And as you noted, tonight there's gonna be a big Black Lives Matter at the oceanfront at 7:57 or 7:55. And so you're supposed to be all dressed in black, everything covered up, can't be identified.
And how are they gonna be identified with, increasing cameras down at the oceanfront? That's a good point. That's a good point.
Plus,
facial recognition is illegal in the state of.
that's correct.
So, why the cameras?
Yeah, go ahead, Ken.
Anybody
And-
who's there is there.
And this gentleman over here, sir, if you would please.
Chris Smith, and I just want to, anybody who can give me a little more information, I'm still trying to decide, but whichever one of the governor candidates who is biggest Trump supporter or is the highest supporter of his policies will be the one that gets my vote.
Me too.
And if you would like to join the Tidewater Libertarian Party, see this gentleman right here, Ron Axel, and we have a gentleman that just arrived late, and sir, there's a $5 charge. You have 1 minute if you would like to come up front and speak. Jerome, 1 minute.
Okay, 1 minute.
Yeah, come up here though, Jerome, on camera. And identify yourself, please.
Don't dilly-dally around.
Okay, good. I'm Jerome Bell. If anyone that don't know me, I ran for Congress 2020 last year. I started with 0. I started with a team of 3. You know, I end up with an army of about 6,000 people, 6,000 donors. I also wasn't able to loan myself any money. I don't have big packs. I don't have rich donors to double max me. But ended up in 3 months, I raised $260,000. And at the end of the day, I ended up walking away with 23% of the vote for a first-time guy. So, you know, I'm coming in 2022, I think, with 23% loyal voters. You know, I outraised one of the opponents for a first time. But, you know, here it is, though. I'm a 27-year Navy vet, retired Chief Petty Officer. I think that's very important. So I'm running for District 2, Congressional District 2. Right, so, I mean, in this state, really, we are in trouble right now as a country. You know, at a time when BLM and these Antifa weirdos are running around trying to really affect and steal the American way of life, we have weak Republicans that are from Virginia to Texas to Arkansas that are caving to this leftist agenda, even on the most basic of facts, whether a boy is a boy or a girl is a girl. We don't need any more Republicans doodling in the margins with these ridiculous joke bills. It's time to roll back the Democratic Communist agenda of the past 50 years in a serious way. They want to finish off America. They really do. And with Biden and Kamala, and I say Kamala and Biden because, you know, she's going to be president, right? In the White House, they're getting dangerously close to doing that. Look at all the bills that they're, you know, putting forward now, okay? And to do that, they absolutely must destroy the nuclear family to finish off America. So, what are they doing? These radical communists are using gender and rejecting basic biology to finish off America. And these weak so-called conservative Republicans are going right along with their plan because they're scared. Well, I'm not. I'm not scared. I didn't serve this country for nearly 3 decades just to hand over the destruction of America and the destruction of the nuclear family over to a bunch of God-hating communists. Unfortunately, we have Republicans that are supposedly representing us that are doing just that. There are many Republicans in these American cities across the nation, including Richmond, that are already caving to the left. Just look at their voting record. We cannot have anyone with those values or those principles representing anyone and representing us in the 2nd District because our very way of life, the life of our children, the life of our grandchildren are at stake. And I promise you, I will never lead us down that road of destruction of who we are as a people. Man, woman, boy or girl, he or she, Mr., Mrs., Sir, Madam, will never be canceled because that's who we are as humans. And guess what? God made us that way.
And my God doesn't make any mistakes. So if you want someone in D.C. that won't cave, that won't back down, that fighter that you need, that won't sell your values to the highest bidder, then guess what? And I know some of them, and I won't be silenced. I won't be put in my place like some have said they want me to be. There's only one clear choice in 2022 to represent you as your congressman in D.C., and that's me, Jerome Bell. Thank you.
Okay, 50-50. Mary Alice, would you please give us a drawing number? Can't hear you.
476-933.
John Moss got it.
No, Kathy Moss.
Oh, Kathy Moss got it. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start. What? Oh, yeah. If anybody would like to hang around and talk, please do it right over there or outside. It's a beautiful day. We've got to go ahead and get all the equipment shut down and be out of here. We have about 10 minutes. Thank you all very much for coming.
Yeah, he told me, I mean, what's his name told me the whole story.